Holidays are supposed to bring families closer. Laughter, warm meals, memories shared around the table. But sometimes those moments reveal cracks we didn't know were there. This past Thanksgiving, I thought I was surrounded by love. Instead, I heard something from my son that shattered me. In front of everyone, he called me embarrassing. My heart broke that night. But what he didn't know was that 2 days later, he'd be the one knocking on my door, begging. Thanksgiving has always been the holiday that mattered most to me. Christmas is nice, birthdays are special, but Thanksgiving? That was sacred. Not because of the food, though I know how to roast a turkey until it's golden brown and juicy enough to make a grown man weak, but because it was the one day when my family always came home. This year, I wanted everything perfect, maybe too perfect. I woke up before dawn, the kitchen still dark and cold, and I lit the stove. By 6, the turkey was already in the oven, basting in its own juices. By 7, I had pies cooling on the counter. Pumpkin, apple, and pecan, because I knew everyone had their favorite. The house slowly filled with the smells of nutmeg, cinnamon, and roasted garlic. As I chopped vegetables, I hummed to myself, thinking about past Thanksgivings. I thought of my son when he was 5, sitting at the table with his little paper turkey hat from school. I thought of the year he was a teenager, sulking at the table but still sneaking extra pie when he thought I wasn't looking. I thought of last year when he had just gotten married and his new wife helped me set the table for the first time. This year, they were coming together again. I had polished the silverware, laid out the good china, and even ironed the tablecloth. I wanted everything to shine. Maybe it was silly, but as a mother, you always want the holidays to feel like magic. When the doorbell rang, I rushed to greet them. My son looked taller, broader, so much a man now that sometimes I forgot the boy he used to be. His wife looked lovely, carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. I hugged them both tightly, though I could feel him stiffen a little, embarrassed by my affection. Come in, I said, taking their coats. The food's almost ready. Sit, relax. The rest of the family trickled in. My sister brought her famous green bean casserole. My brother-in-law carried a 6-pack of beer. Laughter filled the house as cousins and nieces and nephews piled into the living room. It was loud, chaotic, warm, the way Thanksgiving should be. At dinner, everyone gathered around the table, plates piled high, candles flickering. I couldn't stop fussing, making sure plates were full, passing gravy, refilling drinks. I know I hover. It's what I do. I wanted my son to have enough, wanted his wife to feel welcome, wanted everyone to feel cared for, and then it happened. I leaned over to fix my son's napkin, just a small thing. His glass was too close to the edge, and I didn't want it to spill on his shirt. I reached out the way I had done since he was little. He jerked back, rolled his eyes. And in front of everyone, family, friends, his wife, he snapped, "Mom, stop, you're so embarrassing." The room froze. Forks hovered in the air. The chatter died instantly. My cheeks burned. My hand froze halfway to the napkin. Embarrassing. That's what I was to him. I forced a laugh, trying to make light of it. Oh, you know me. Always fussing. But my voice cracked, betraying me. I excused myself, muttering something about checking the pies, and retreated to the kitchen. Inside, I gripped the counter until my knuckles turned white. The noise of the family carried faintly from the dining room, but all I heard was that word. Embarrassing. After everything I had done for him, for years, decades, was that really how he saw me? I wiped my eyes quickly before returning to the table. A smile plastered on my face. I laughed at jokes, served dessert, cleared plates, but inside something had cracked. The night ended, people hugged goodbye, and the house grew quiet again. But that word lingered in the air, louder than any laughter had been. And as I washed the last dish, I couldn't shake the question, was I nothing more than an embarrassment to my own son? That night, after everyone had left, the house felt hollow, the kind of hollow that even the hum of the refrigerator couldn't fill. I walked from room to room, gathering half-empty glasses, stacking plates, blowing out candles that had burned down to stubs. Normally, I loved this part. The quiet after a holiday, when the house still smelled like turkey and pie, when leftovers waited neatly in the fridge. But not this time. All I could hear was his voice, sharp and dismissive, echoing in my mind, "Mom, stop, you're so embarrassing." I sat down at the dining table, staring at the chair where he had sat just hours before. I remembered his little boy smile in that very seat, his legs swinging under the table because they couldn't reach the floor. I remembered him running to me for another roll, asking for more cranberry sauce, laughing when I wiped a smudge off his cheek. And now, I was an embarrassment. I pressed my palms together, fighting the sting in my eyes. How quickly children forget. How quickly they grow, shed their need for you, and sometimes their respect too. The next morning, I thought maybe he would call, maybe he'd realize how harsh he had been, maybe he'd apologize. But the phone stayed silent. I busied myself in the kitchen. I washed dishes slowly, one by one, letting the hot water scald my hands just to feel something other than the ache in my chest. I packed leftovers into containers, labeling them neatly even though no one would probably eat them. I swept the floors, wiped the counters, straightened chairs. The house looked perfect again. But inside, I was anything but. By evening, I sat on the couch, staring at the family photo on the wall. Thanksgiving, years ago. My son stood next to me, his arm around my shoulders, smiling with genuine warmth. When had that changed? When had my love turned from comfort to shame in his eyes? For 2 days, the silence stretched. No text, no apology, just silence. And in that silence, doubts crept in. Had I smothered him? Had my fussing really embarrassed him? Or was it something deeper? His own pride, his own insecurities. I thought about his wife sitting there, watching him snap at me. Did she think I was embarrassing too? My heart twisted. A mother's job never ends, but maybe I hadn't realized that part of the job is learning when to step back. Still, that word, embarrassing, gnawed at me. Not just because of what he said, but because of what it revealed. Somewhere along the line, my son had stopped seeing the woman who raised him and started seeing only the flaws. By the second night, I sat by the window watching the November wind scatter leaves across the yard. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. The silence had grown so loud it almost buzzed. I thought about picking up the phone, calling him, demanding an apology, telling him how deeply he had hurt me. But pride held me back. If he couldn't see it in my eyes that night, if he couldn't feel the crack in my voice, then maybe my words wouldn't matter either. So I waited. Not out of strategy, but out of exhaustion. I had given enough. For now, the silence would speak for me. And as I closed the curtains that night, I whispered a truth to myself. Sometimes children only learn respect when life humbles them. And I didn't know it then, but my son's humbling was already on its way. Sunday morning came cold and gray. The kind of morning where the air outside bites at your skin and the sky feels too heavy. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee growing lukewarm, staring blankly at the steam curling upward. The silence of the house wrapped around me again. 2 days had passed since Thanksgiving. 2 long days of no calls, no messages, nothing but the echo of that word circling in my head. Embarrassing. Then there was a knock. Soft. Hesitant. Not the confident kind of knock you expect from a man sure of himself. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. A part of me already knew who it was. When I opened the door, there he stood. My son. The same son who had dismissed me in front of everyone just 48 hours earlier. But now, he didn't look so proud. His shoulders slumped, his hair uncombed, his eyes ringed with dark circles. He looked tired, defeated, smaller somehow, despite his tall frame. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost boyish. "Can I come in?" I hesitated just a moment, long enough for him to notice, before stepping aside. He walked in, glancing around like he hadn't been in this house 100 times. He sat at the same dining table where we had eaten Thanksgiving dinner, the memory of that night still heavy in the air. For a moment, he said nothing. His fingers tapped nervously against the wood, his eyes darting down to the floor. Finally, he spoke. "I lost my job," he admitted. His voice cracked on the last word. "They laid me off on Friday. I didn't want to say anything at Thanksgiving. I didn't want anyone to know." My heart clenched. He was proud. Too proud. That much I knew. He had worked hard for that job, poured himself into it, bragged about the promotions, the long hours, the paycheck that proved he'd made it. And now it was gone. "I didn't know what to do," he continued, his hands gripping the edge of the chair. "I felt so stupid. And when you kept fussing over me at dinner, He stopped, swallowing hard. I snapped. I shouldn't have. "I'm sorry, Mom." His words hit me in 2 ways. First, the sting of memory, his sharp voice at the table. The laughter cut short, my humiliation. But second, the glimpse of truth. Beneath his anger had been fear, shame, insecurity. I sat down across from him, folding my hands. "Son," I said softly, "I've fussed over you since the day you were born. When I saw your glass too close to the edge, I reached out because that's what mothers do. Not to embarrass you, but to care. And if that embarrassed you, then maybe that says more about what you were feeling than about what I did." He lowered his head, eyes glassy. "I know, I see that now. I didn't want anyone to see me weak. I thought if I acted annoyed, I could cover it up. But it only made me hurt you." There it was, the truth, not cruelty, not disdain, just a man too scared to show his cracks. I wanted to reach out, to touch his cheek, like when he was little. but I stayed still, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he whispered, "I need your help. I don't know what to do." Those words, simple, raw, were the very opposite of what he'd called me days before. I was no longer embarrassing. I was necessary. I was Mom. And though a part of me wanted to remind him of the pain he'd caused, another part, the bigger part, knew this was the moment to listen. So I took a deep breath and said, "All right, let's figure this out. Together." The kettle whistled faintly on the stove, but neither of us moved to pour tea. My son sat at the dining table, his hands clasped together, his head bowed as though the weight of the world was pressing down on his shoulders. I hadn't seen him look so small since he was a boy, back when scraped knees and failed math tests had been his biggest battles. "I don't know what to do," he whispered again, his voice trembling. I thought I had everything figured out, the job, the apartment, the life, and now it's gone. 2 days ago, I laughed with friends about how secure I was, and today, I can't even pay next month's rent. I leaned back in my chair, studying him quietly. My heart ached, not just for his struggle, but for the boy beneath the man, the boy who had always wanted to prove himself, to stand taller than he was. "Do you know what hurt me most on Thanksgiving?" I asked softly. He looked up, his eyes wary. "What?" "That word," I said, "embarrassing, not because you said it in front of everyone, not even because it stung my pride, but because it made me realize you'd forgotten everything I've ever done for you. For years, I was your shelter, your nurse, your cheerleader, your cook, your protector. And now, all you saw was someone to be ashamed of." Tears welled in his eyes. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, struggling to find words. Finally, he said, "I was wrong, Mom. I was cruel. I took my fear out on you. I didn't mean it, but I know that doesn't erase it." I reached across the table and laid my hand over his. His hand was rough, calloused from years of work, but in that moment, he squeezed mine like a child again. "Son," I said, "being cared for is not weakness. Letting someone love you, even fuss over you, doesn't make you small. It makes you human, and if you can't accept that from your mother, who will you accept it from?" He wiped at his face quickly, embarrassed by his own tears. I guess I forgot that. I was so desperate to prove I wasn't a kid anymore. But in doing that, I treated you like you were less. And you're not. I smiled faintly, though my heart was heavy. No mother wants to be her child's embarrassment. We want to be their safe place, that's all. For a long while, we just sat there, hands joined, silence wrapping around us. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, but inside, something softer stirred, a fragile mending of respect. He cleared his throat. "Mom, I don't just need money or a plan right now. I need you. I need your guidance. I know I don't say it enough, but you've always been my foundation. I'm sorry I forgot that." The apology didn't erase the sting completely. Wounds don't vanish overnight, but it was a balm, enough to soothe, enough to let healing begin. I poured the tea at last, sliding a mug toward him. "Then let's start here," I said. "One step at a time. We'll figure it out. You're not alone." He nodded, gripping the mug with both hands like it was a lifeline. And for the first time in years, I saw my son not just as a man striving for independence, but as someone humble enough to learn the value of respect. That night, when he left, he hugged me. Not a quick, distracted hug, but a long, tight one, the kind that said more than words ever could. And in that embrace, I realized something. Sometimes children need to stumble, to fall, to be stripped of pride, before they remember where home really is. The days after that Sunday felt different. The silence that had once filled my house like a heavy fog was replaced by something else, his presence. My son started coming by more often, sometimes unannounced, sometimes with a text beforehand. "Are you home, Mom?" At first, I thought it was just about the job. He needed guidance, maybe a little financial support, but as the days stretched into weeks, I realized it was more than that. He wasn't just looking for solutions, he was looking for connection. We sat at the kitchen table, night after night, sifting through job listings. I showed him how to update his resume, reminded him of strengths he had forgotten. "You've always been good with people," I told him. "You just need to believe in that again." He would sigh, rub his temples, and say, "I don't know if I can start over." And I would smile gently. "You've started over before. Remember when you failed that college course and thought your life was over? You got back up, you'll do it again." He listened, really listened. For the first time in years, I felt like my words carried weight with him again. Meals became our routine. Sometimes I cooked, sometimes we ordered takeout, but always we ate together. And during those meals, he began to look at me differently. Not as the embarrassing mom who fussed over napkins, but as someone who had wisdom to share, someone who could still be his safe place. One evening, as we sat eating leftover chili, he put his spoon down and said quietly, "Mom, I don't think I ever realized how much you've done for me. I was so busy trying to prove I didn't need anyone. I forgot that you're the reason I got this far at all." The words made my chest tighten, but in a good way. I didn't need grand gestures or dramatic apologies. That single acknowledgement said with sincerity was enough. Slowly, respect returned to his eyes. Not pity, not obligation. Respect. It wasn't just about him, though. I learned something, too. I learned that my role as a mother had to evolve, that fussing over his napkin or filling his plate might not be what he needed anymore. What he needed was trust, space, a reminder that I saw him not just as my boy, but as a man who was still learning. And maybe that was the real lesson hidden in that painful Thanksgiving. He had to humble himself, and I had to let go of my grip a little. Love remained, but respect had to grow on both sides. Weeks later, he landed an interview. He wore his best suit, and as he left my house, he paused at the door. "Mom," he said, looking me square in the eye, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled, brushing invisible lint off his jacket. "That's what moms do. But don't forget, respect goes both ways." He nodded, a small, sheepish grin tugging at his lips. That Thanksgiving will always sting when I remember it. But in a strange way, I'm grateful for it too. Because without that wound, we might not have had this healing. Without those harsh words, we might never have had the chance to rebuild on stronger ground. Moving forward, I know he will stumble again. Life has a way of humbling all of us. But I also know that when he does, he won't see me as an embarrassment anymore. He'll see me as what I've always been, his mother, his anchor, his home. And maybe that's the real blessing I needed this Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving will always remind me of that sting, being called embarrassing by the very child I gave everything to. But 2 days later, when he sat across from me, humbled, asking for help, I understood something deeper. Sometimes the sharpest words come from fear, not malice. Sometimes pride speaks louder than love, until life strips it away. He hurt me, yes, but he also came back. He remembered who I was, not just the woman fussing over napkins, but the mother who had always been his safe place. If you've ever been dismissed or taken for granted, remember, love has a way of circling back, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply being the one they turn to when the world humbles them.